All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Whatever, good number of questions came in. We'll see how far we get. I don't think we're going to get that far. But one question that came in was actually a number of questions here about basically about the binding of Isaac. Which, whatever, it's complicated, definitely complicated in and of itself, no question, no question about that. So whatever, we'll see how far, it goes here. Question was, first question is, why is it that God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac? Right, but an angel told him to stop. Right now, good question, because the reality is God is the one who made the command, which we understand. Right, we definitely understand God's the one who made the command. Right, and the command was, technically, you get around the question because God says, "I want you to bring him up." Right, I want you to bring him up to a place I'm going to show you. Right, so you could say technically bring him up does not mean necessarily to sacrifice. Now, someone's going to say, come on, that's what all the commentaries say. That's what it seems like, right? Definitely what it seems like. And in the end, okay, he doesn't sacrifice him, right? It was a test, but he could say, but that was the goal. According to Kabbalah, which we're not going to get into, right? But according to Kabbalah, he actually died and he came back, brought him back to life. Right, so the whole thing, what that's all about, which we're not going to get into. But question is, okay, if that is the test, which essentially everyone agrees, all the commentaries agree, it's definitely one of the, tests, one of the 10 trials that Abraham himself goes through. So the question here is, okay, God gave the command. 100%, God gave the commands, and it would seem a little bit strange why he does not give the final command to stop. Because if you read the end, you read at the end, it says an angel calls up. It doesn't say God. Right now, it could say maybe really it was God's voice coming through the angel. It could be one answer. Right, the Medrash says in Leviticus Rabbah that an angel, one answer is an angel called, but he's not the one who spoke. It was actually an utterance of God, whatever that means. See, that's the famous question. Also, what about the snake? What about the primordial snake? Right, the snake was the most cunning of all animals, says at the beginning of Genesis chapter 3. And the snake spoke. Now the question is, did the snake really speak? Or do we understand the snake? The snake is really the evil inclination, Mr. S, we'll call him, right? The Satan, Mr. S, the evil inclination, the angel of death. He's an angel, right? Essentially, he's an angel. This angel doesn't have free will, right? He tries to make us sin. That's what he's good at. And he takes people from this world, right? But he can't do whatever he wants. Right, he can't take anybody necessarily before their time. Right, where do we learn that out from? From the book of Job. 100% the book of Job. Why? Because the Mr. S challenges God, and God tells him, my servant Job, perfect, this, that. So Mr. S challenges God, challenges him. He says, let me have some fun with him. And I guarantee he's going to blast him. 100% he's going to blast him against you, right? He's going to curse you out. And God says, no, he's not going to. So God gives him permission, but he tells him, you're not allowed to kill him. You can't kill him. You can take away his kids. You can make him suffer physically, take away his livelihood, all kinds of things. You can't kill him. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean in the vernacular? It means an angel does not have free will. Right? Let's make clear. An angel doesn't have free will. They're messengers. We see that Abraham when it's a hot day, he's looking for guests, and he wants to have guests, and 3 Arabs come. Right? Rashi says on the spot, what do you mean 3 Arabs? Right? What does it mean? They were disguised as angels. So if they're disguised as angels, what are they doing there? One, to tell him that Sodom is going to get destroyed. One, or really to overthrow Sodom. The second, to tell him he's going to have a child. And the third, to heal him. Right? He came to heal him from circumcision. Right? 100 years old. Makes perfect sense. Etc. So, but what do we learn? What do we learn from there? We learn very clear that an angel cannot do more than one task. Can't multitask. Angels don't multitask. In other words, God gives the command, they do it. And then they go on to the next thing, whatever they're commanded to do. They don't have free will. You have to watch my video on Tanakh Talk, spoke about that, but angels having free will. Angels don't have free will. So what's the deal with the snake? Right? So very simply, the Mr. S over here, the evil inclination, angel of death, whatever you want to call him, spoke through the snake. One explanation. You can tell me the snake spoke. Okay, snake had legs. The Gemara says, they gets his legs, chopped off. That's punishment. One of the punishments. Gets his legs chopped off, and he's got food forever. Doesn't have any problem, with food. So the question commentaries ask is, why is that a curse? Simple answer is because God gives you everything. Give you $1 million or more, right? Or 10 times more. He gives you everything you want. The person's not going to pray. God's like, here, I'll give you all this money, scram. I don't want to have anything to do with you. The Reform conservative movements, just mention them. They got all the money, plenty of money. They got all these buildings, etc. Nobody comes to them. They're all dying. Why is God giving so much money? Why is it for Orthodox groups, to raise money for yeshivas, girls' schools, other things? It's like pushing pennies. It's like pushing nickels back and forth. That's what it's like. Right? So the head of the yeshiva, the head of the institution has to travel, has to fundraise. Right? So what's the purpose of that? Well, I understand, as the Mission Pirkei Avos says in ethics of our fathers, right? Ain't kemach, ain't Torah. Right? If you don't have flour, no Torah. What does flour represent? Money. So they have to go, plenty of places all over the world in order to give strength to others. Right? So people who are there, they're gaining. They're gaining from this person's wisdom. And the person's gaining because they're helping them, they're helping them financially. So it works both ways. But if God really hated us, right, he just say, here, I'll give you everything, no problem. But you can tell me everybody has problems. True? Right? Even the rich of the rich have problems. All kinds of problems. Fine, but it's not the same. Are they going to pray? No, they got it easy. They got it easy. But whatever, that's not the topic here. Right? So the first thing is, as we mentioned, by the angel, by the snake, what happened? The angel spoke. The angel spoke through the snake. Right? That's one explanation. So here, same thing. Right? Says the Medrash, the angel called out, but who spoke? It wasn't the angel speaking. The Medrash says. It was God himself. God himself spoke, the angel called out. What he spoke, how Abraham heard, what that level of prophecy is, that's a whole discussion also. That's also a huge discussion. Because, we know that God spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu whenever Moses wanted. So very good. What was the language? What was the language that they used? Because the commentaries tell us it's like a person speaks to their friend. When a person speaks to their friend, they talk whatever language. And so the question is, what was that communication like? What was the communication and prophecy in general like? Again, food for thought over here, right? We're not going to go through prophecy here because we do all these things. Someone here points out big questions, right? A lot of questions, they say the questions are always better than the answer, but, got to come up with some sort of answer here, right? So the first thing is that we said one explanation is the angel called out. The angel called out and God spoke. Whatever that that idea of God speaking and prophecy and how that works. There's a second explanation. Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg understands. How does he learn out? He learns that the angel only called out Abraham's name. But the actual rest of the commands, not to touch Isaac, not to touch Yitzchak, that was spoken by God himself. Right? That was spoken by God. So I guess similar to the first explanation. It's similar, I guess, to the first explanation. Third explanation comes from Samson Raphael Hirsch. Samson Raphael Hirsch, right? Whatever, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, or 20 years ago. In his commentary, actually, you get his commentary in English, translated into English, on Chumash. And interesting enough, they finally came out with a new translation. Thank God, because the old translation obviously was translated from the German. And the translation had a lot of the thous and the thises and the kind of like archaic, in a certain way, archaic English. So they got a much better translation now. But even so, comes along with Samson Raphael Hirsch, and he explains God had given the original command. Right? Remember, God spoke to Abraham, telling him, this is what you do. I want you to go up to this mountain. I want you to go to this place. I'm going to show you. You're going to take your son, right, your beloved son, Isaac, etc. And I want you to sacrifice. I want you to bring him up. Now, God gave the command. God gave a direct command. Now, had the command been given by an intermediary, let's say the command was given by an angel. Now, again, we don't pray to angels. We don't pray to intermediaries, i.e. sun, the moon, the stars, any of these things. Even though these things have power only because God wields that power, they don't have independent power. Otherwise, if you say they have independent power, goes against the Rambam's first of the 13 principles, right? First of the 13 principles of faith that says that God's absolute. That means if God is absolute, he has no needs. If he has no needs, these things cannot have independent power. No such thing. Right? They can't be independent. They can't have independent power. All stems from God. What's the mistake? What's the mistake many made? They said God's so busy keeping the universe together, keeping all the black holes and the earth, not so close to the sun and, not so far away from the sun, doing all these things in nature, take care of the world. He's too lofty. And when he's too lofty, come on, he's busy. He's busy doing all these other things. Right? So he gives these other powers, so to speak, to these things, to these, inanimate objects. Problem is, they don't have power without God. They have zero power without God. So what's the point? They won't have independent power. So if you say they have independent power, God's too lofty, whatever you want to call it, what are we going to say? That's idolatry. That's giving a intermediary power that doesn't have. So comes along Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch. Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch says God had commanded to sacrifice Isaac. What would have happened if it was an angel? If God had given the command to the angel and said, okay, I want you to go tell Abraham over here, sacrifice his son, he's going to think twice. He's going to think 3 times. Why? Because what did God tell him before? It goes all against everything God told. Why does it go against everything God said? Very simple. Because God told him this is going to be your progeny. This is going to be your offspring. This is how you're going to pass it down. All your spiritual power is going to go to Isaac. It's going to be passed down to him. It goes against everything he knows. That's why some people, God forbid, heretics that they are, they say, see, Abraham went with blind faith. When Abraham went with blind faith, he failed. He failed the binding of Isaac, God forbid. Not only he failed, God failed. What's he doing? What's he doing testing him like that? That's heresy. It's absolute heresy. Right? So I'll get to the answer then, and then speak about it a little bit more. That had Abraham got a command from an angel, Had the angel told him what to do, he wouldn't have listened. Why wouldn't he have listened? Because it went against everything he stood for. Went against everything God had told him. Wouldn't have made sense for him to do it. Not at all. Right now, but the commands to stop, right? The command to stop over here and not do anything to Isaac, that could come through an angel. Why does it come through an angel? Why? Because it realigns with all the previous messages. In other words, God doesn't have to come and say, don't do this. He already understands it from God. He understands it goes against everything, that went on before, that God had told him. But God does not have to say, you know what? Now that you're not gonna do it, so everything goes back to the original. I don't need to do that. God says, I don't need to come down. I don't need to explain it to you. I can get an angel to stop you. Right? Second explanation, meaning that had an angel done it in the first place, he never would have believed him. Went against everything he believed. 100% everything he believed. Everything that God had told him. So if that's true. What happened at the end? At the end, everything gets realigned. Right? That's what God tells him. What God tells him sticks. You're not going to die. But it doesn't have to come through God. That's what Rav Samson Hirsch answers. Now, just on that question, on that idea, you look at the binding of Isaac. So you tell me, why does God make him go through in the first place? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of him going through it? Why don't we give him credit as if he would have done it? Or if it, God knows the thoughts of man. So give him credit. What's the problem? Unreached potential is unreached potential. That's what it is. If you didn't do it, you didn't do it. Now, you might get credit for a thought about doing a mitzvah, even though you didn't do it. That you could get credit for, because you wanted to do the mitzvah. But if you're in the middle of the mitzvah and you stop, then the punishment is absolutely severe. The punishment is that you bury your wife and your kids in your lifetime. Now, you're going to ask why. Why is the punishment that severe? Why should it be that severe in general? It should be that severe in general, very simply. You started a mitzvah, you didn't finish, right? 100% you didn't finish. Now, not finishing the mitzvah, unless you're under absolute onus, it's not in your control, right? If it's not in your control, that's one thing. If it's in your control, it's like you're saying, God, I know I started this. I know it was important, but I guess it wasn't that important. I got distracted. God's going to say, come on, you got distracted. You started this mitzvah, how could you not finish it? How in the world could you have been distracted? That the punishment is more severe. You didn't start the mitzvah, okay? You had a good thought. You had good intention. It's a good intention I could get credit for. That I could get credit for. Problem is, you're going to say, Devarim shebalev eino devarim. Words in my heart don't mean anything. Because in general, whatever I think, whatever's in my heart, normally doesn't matter. Except when, let's say, it comes to idolatry or immorality. Even if I say in my mind, if it's not me, a person says in their mind, JC's my God. Yeah, that's a prohibition. That's a huge prohibition. But you didn't say it outright. You didn't bow down. You didn't give incense. You didn't do a wine libation. So what? You said it in your mind. Saying in your mind enough. Immorality, I think certain things. I don't act on it. Still forbidden. Right? But most things I do, I'm just throwing this out there. Most things that a person would think about, even if they don't do it, they're not punished for. Necessarily. Right? They're not necessarily punished. Right? Which actually, maybe I'll incorporate this into that someone had asked earlier, which is actually this question. So maybe I'll hit a bunch of questions in one shot here. At least one question here. 1 second. Let me just bring it up here. Question was, is it a bigger sin to think about sin than to do it? Right? So the King David says in Psalms, he says, if I saw evil temptations rise into my heart, God ignored it, as if he didn't hear it, because he doesn't consider bad thoughts as actions. Right? So now someone's going to say, wow, there's also a deep question. Right? But you see, the Torah is interconnected. Torah is always interconnected. Right? The question is, what does that mean? Is it a bigger sin? We'll get back to the bind of Isaac in a second. But is it a bigger sin to think about sin? So it's brought down, Talmud brings down that, that the thought itself is worse than the sin. Now you're going to say, how can it be? How in the world could it be? I didn't do anything. Right? I thought about doing it. Okay. So what if I thought about it? Even if I thought about it, who cares? Did I do it? I didn't do it. I didn't do it over here. If I didn't do it, in general, how can I be punished? And why is that statement true? Why is that statement true? We'll have to see what King David said, but why is that statement true? That it's bigger sin to think about the sin. Why would I think? Because the purpose is I have to be clean of thought. The Ramchal, Rabbi Chaim Coffman, blessed memory, and Path of the Just, in his chapter 11, speaks about the character trait of cleanliness. Means cleanliness of thought. In other words, the person's got to be squeaky clean, not just on what they do, but if their thoughts in general. And he talks about the problem with being haughty, gaiva, being conceited. He talks about immorality. He talks about jealousy, and not having one smidgen, one iota of bad thought. Right? So it's a very high level here. That's why, a few chapters in, you read Path of the Just, you say, come on, not for this generation. Right? Who's holding there? Well, it's where we should be holding. Can anyone say they have true, pure cleanliness of thoughts? Right? I'll give one example. You take Pinchas. What did Pinchas do? Right? Before he's about to act on Zimri and Cosby Batsur. Right? Zimri, the head of the tribe of Shimon. Right? What happened? They're doing the shish kebab. They're doing the jitterbug. We're going to keep this clean. He's PG-13. And he asks Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the halacha? Right? This Jew with a non-Jew, what's the halacha? What do you do in such a case? And they're in the middle of the act. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't remember. Pinchas says, I remember, and he killed them. And he shish kebabbed them. Right? Took a spear, killed them. Now, there are a lot of miracles happen to Pinchas. Had Zimri fought back and killed him, he wouldn't be guilty. Pinchas has status of a rodef, of a pursuer. So there are many miracles that happen. What's the point? Everyone says Pinchas is a vigilante. Right? Vigilanteism in the Torah. Watch my video on Parshas Pinchas on my YouTube channel. Right? But they say, he's a vigilante. No, he asked the question first. He didn't go do it. He asked Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the halacha? What do you do? What do you do over here? So, the commentaries tell us, had Pinchas not had 100% pureness of heart and thought, that's the point here. 100%, he didn't do it for jealousy. He didn't do it because he hated Pinchas or any, even a small smidgen that he was disgusted with him, whatever, and there's some small smidgen of motivation in the negative, it wouldn't have been allowed to do it. Right? Certainly for that mitzvah, you have to be in 100%. Can't be 99%, can't be 99.99%. It has to be 100%. Right? So the Ramchal says, how many of us can say we have cleanliness of thoughts? And then he tells us how we can acquire that. It means all our thoughts at all times. When we speak, we think about others. All kinds of things. Someone will say, come on, shut the book. We're not holding there. We need to be holding there. We need to be working hard. That's what we're here for, the Ramchal says. We're here to strive. We're here to struggle. Right? That's the purpose of what we're here for. So now that being the case, so you're going to say, oh, but what about what I think? Right? That was the question. Is it a bigger sin to think about sin than to do it? Why? What's the problem? What's the problem? Problem is, I got to learn to control my mind. If I don't learn to control my mind, then you just act on whatever you feel like doing. And that makes us no different than the animals. See, the animals, we're created after the animals. So we're considered, mankind, the pinnacle of creation. Because when God breathed in the spirit of life, the Torah tells me, the Aramaic translation says he gave us a ruach mamalalo, ability to speak, to reason, to make decisions. Animals don't do that. Animals, yeah, you can tell me they can choose to eat, not to eat, whatever, but they're programmed. They have one aspect of the soul. They're programmed DNA. We have the ability to reason, to make decisions, right? 100%. We're the only being that can do that. So if we do the right thing and we go in the way God wants, very good. Tremendous. So we are the pinnacle of creation. If we go according to our base desires, which is most of the world today, they go according to their base desires, what happens? Then we say we're no better than animals, because animals were created before us. Isn't that the ultimate insult? Unbelievable insult. You say, well, aren't we greater? We control animals. You tell me, some people die, they're killed by animals every year. Right? I don't know, hundreds, however it is, hundreds, thousands, whatever. But the reality is we're in control, not them. But are we any better than animals when we act like them? And we don't do what God wants. We're no better. Right? So says the Torah, oh, look, animals created first, see? You act like us, you're no better than us. Not only that, we're better than you because we're created first. Oh, but you tell me, listen, you got Jews that are keeping what God wants, non-Jews, keeping the Noahide laws and all that. And they're doing what God wants. Yeah, that shows we're greater than animals. That shows we're on a higher level. But see, when a person gets in a rut and we go according to what our mind tells us, right? We don't have any checks and balances. When we go according to what our mind tells us, see, the sin is just an afterthought. Why do I say it's an afterthought? Because what caused you to sin? What caused the sin in general? What caused the sin in general is one, it could be many things. It could be something built up. And then a person just does it, whatever it is. Right? So the reality is, the sin, where does it come from? It comes from my mind. Now, it doesn't mean your mind's telling you, okay, you're going to sin like this right now. It's not going to say you're going to desecrate Shabbos, you're going to worship idols right now. Right? The evil inclination knows it's not going to happen. What the evil inclination also knows is that he has a lot of patience. All he has to do is drive a little bit of wedge into your armor and just wait till it gets bigger and bigger and bigger till you actually do the sin. See, it's the mind that controls. The mind, the heart tells the mind, I need this. A friend of mine was once trying to keep kosher, and it's like, he said, I have this desire for pepperoni pizza. He's like, I have this desire, and it got him. It got him. Right? We're like, no, you got to work on this, work on that, whatever. It got him. Because it wasn't willing to take control. So you're going to say, but everybody sins. No one in this world hasn't sinned, right? Only a handful of individuals. True. Only a handful of individuals died because of the sin of Adam and Eve. Be that as it may, what do I have? What do I have over here? So I have the fact that we all sin at some level. But see, if you keep doing it over and over and over again, you justify it. Most people don't keep it anyway. God will understand. I'm trying to this, whatever. We make a lot of excuses. Now, that being said, we have to answer. Right? We're going to have to answer for what we've done. But the point is that my mind controls what I do or what I don't do. There's the disconnect. The mind can tell you what the right thing to do. We're not just, robots over here. The problem is there's a disconnect between the mind and the heart. Constant disconnect. The heart wants to, do all these other things. The mind says, I can't. So the heart tries to convince you, to the evil inclination, all these things. But where does it start? It starts in your mind. If you don't learn to control your mind, Coffman's language, you are silly putty. You're going to be used as silly putty for the evil inclination. Right? In other words, the evil inclination is going to have an absolute field day. Doesn't have to work that hard. Once a person failed once and they failed the second time, then that's part of your nature. Once it's part of your nature, as we said many times before, it's much harder to fight. If it's outside of you, you fight against it, this, that. Right? Someone there asks another major question: how do you control sinful thoughts? Right? So the Gemara said, I shouldn't laugh. It's a good question. Right? While we're on this topic, the Gemara says three things. What's the first thing you should do? Say the Shema. Right? You have fear of heaven. You understand there's reward and punishment. Second paragraph. If that doesn't work, go somewhere to learn. Go to a study hall to learn. You don't live there anywhere. Take out a book to learn. If that doesn't work, says the Gemara, what do? Think about the day of your death. Commentaries ask, so why don't you just think about the day of your death first? Well, it's a little bit depressing. Right? There are other ways to overcome this without that. But what's the purpose of the thinking of your day of your death? Because the day of your death, you're going to have to answer now. Once you put it in the ground and you get judged and your soul goes up, you're going to have to answer. You're going to have to answer for what you did. So we have to learn how to control our thoughts. A little bit of Torah pushes away a lot of darkness. When does a person sin in general? Gemara says, when nichnas bo ruach shtus, when it enters in you a foolish thought. Just think about it. Think about how God runs the world. Think about all the good things that he does. Have enough oxygen, plenty of water, right? God gives the ability to produce food. He gives us life. He gives us everything. Keeps everything in perfect motion. Right? He keeps, we mentioned before, he keeps the earth not too close to the sun, not too far away. So we don't die. We don't either freeze to death or get burnt up. Right? All these things, million things to be thankful for. And God's awesomeness in the world, right? Don't we always say we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust? We live in a small town, in a city, right? In a state, in a continent, in a country, in a continent, planet, galaxy. We're getting much smaller. You think God cares what I think? Think God cares what I do? 100%. But I'm very small. You're right. But our actions can have unbelievable ramifications. Unbelievable ramifications. That's not the topic for now. So a person has to realize, look at all the greatness all the greatness. That's why we should have fear of God, not just because we're afraid we're gonna fry in hell forever. Right? That's the lowest level of fear. Highest level of fear is to understand God's awesomeness in the world. So how could it be? How could it be a person could want to sin in general? Going against the King of Kings, going against the Creator gives you everything. How can a person do that? Right? What's the simple answer? Simple answer is that there's an evil inclination. And the evil inclination has a lot of power. A lot of power. I'll tell you how far the power goes. I know of a story, I don't know the details well. But I'm just going to throw out this story. Now, I know if somebody became religious, they didn't grow up as an Orthodox Jew, became religious, they went back. They ended up going back to the States. And the family's not religious. And their family exacted on them a tremendous amount of pressure. Now, this is a Jew, not a JIT, a Noahide, whatever, Jew in training, whatever you want to call them. Right? It's a Jew, born Jew. And this person had a lot of problems. They had no support. They had absolutely zero support. Jewish community didn't give them enough support. I don't know exactly what the story was, but their family destroyed them. Made it very, very hard. Put a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. Now, I'm thinking if this person, right, they made the following statement. They said, God put me into a position, into a situation I couldn't handle. Now, we don't believe that's true. We may think we can't handle whatever situation we're in. But you know what? God doesn't put us in a situation we can't handle. It may be hard. It may be next to impossible. Right? Whatever it is, whatever the trial is. But, after the fact, you can be pretty amazed. Look, I got through it somehow. I made it. So this person had a lot of pressure, a ton of pressure put on them by family. Ton of pressure. No support, seemingly no support from anywhere else. They crumbled over time. Now, we can't judge that. It's very hard to judge that. It's not for us to judge anyway. But it's understandable. Someone has no, family causes all kinds of problems. And we've spoken about this also. I want to digress here. Right? But, family causes a lot of problems. They can say, come on, if you go out to eat with us, I'm not going to tell anyone, etc. And if you eat non-kosher, we're not going to say anything. If you do this, blah, blah, blah. They want you to be like everyone else. They don't want you, quote unquote, break up the family. Even though you're connecting to a link that's 3,000 years old or more. So they put a lot of pressure. So I'm not going to say it's easy. Definitely not going to say it's easy. Family pressure is hard. So, what would Moiv Rebbe, Arav Agon Moshe Stor Moshlita should be well? And what would he answer? He'd say, go eat kogel. That's what he would say. You're going to worry what someone says? You're going to worry family members don't know anything? They can't even read Hebrew. They don't know the Bible. They don't know anything. They never studied. And I'm going to take what they say seriously? Not at all. It can be painful. Not going to disagree. Right? 100% could be painful. But if someone, the best advice Rabbi ever gave me is, think of these people like they're absolutely insane. If someone who's mentally challenged has a 25 IQ and they say something, they'll slobber over you or do something, yeah, you're going to be annoyed. You're going to get upset. What are you going to get upset for? They don't have brain capacity. They don't know what they're doing. It's not their fault. So what are you getting upset about? So these people are insane. Someone who's ever studied philosophy, modern philosophy, Jewish philosophy, Torah, Doesn't make them agnostic or an atheist, makes them an idiot. You're going to take what they say seriously? It's annoying. I agree. 100%, it's annoying, but what are you going to do? These are the hands we're dealt with. Don't worry about what people are going to say. So, I'm not here to judge. But see, someone get that kind of pressure on them, it's hard. No question about it. No question about it. Question is, how does God look at it? So if God really says you could have overcome it. So what happened? This person stopped being religious. That's what happened. Then finish the story. That's what happened. So after 120 years, how's God going to judge it? It's a good question. 100% a good question. If I were playing God, put on my funny George Burns glasses and my funny mustache, what would I answer? I put you in that situation. I'm going to show you now, second video. I'm going to show you the second video what you could have been. And all that person's going to do is cry and cry and cry as a pure soul. I don't know how that works, but they're going to be so embarrassed that I could have done it. I could have overcome it. They're going to, that's part of what Gehenna, what hell is. That's part of the process of rectification. Feeling like 100% a piece of dirt. Because now they know what the truth is. They know what absolute truth is. They said, I could have done this. I could have overcome. I could have become this or whatever. Is there no more embarrassment than that? Again, is that situation an easy situation? No, it's not. That person got broken by the situation, okay? But see, they took a lot on the chin by family. Why weren't they in the Jewish community? Should have been in a Jewish community. Should have been by people for Shabbos. Should have tried done things on their own in a hostile environment. No point in that. People are just going to make fun. Or say things. Some may be respectful, probably not. Probably a lot of people are not going to be respectful. Okay. But yeah, I want to get back to the original question here. And so the idea over here was, the question was, is it bigger to think about the sin? Yeah, it's worse. Why? Because when you do the action, that's already over time. You've already been thinking about doing it. So the more you've been thinking about doing it, it becomes more part of you. It's harder to fight. So now you do the action. That's like, okay, that's like the cherry on top. That's like just the afterthought. Okay, now you're going to do it. Fine. But it's been building. Where? In your mind. So that's why it's worse. You're going to say, but he didn't do the action. You're right. Think about something a person wanted to do. Think about whatever sin a person you were going to do. You understand the severity, how bad it is, and this and that. But what's the problem? You didn't do it. Very good. But doesn't leave you alone. It just keeps coming at you. Right? So the $1 million question, $1.5 million question. How do you do to stop it? Think about other things. Think about Torah. Watch a video on Torah. Something to get your mind off of it. That's the only way. That is the only way. You have to learn how to control your thoughts. It's not an easy thing. I'm not saying it's an easy thing. The more, if a person we have too much free time. Used to be doing laundry, now that we're after the 9 days, after the fast of the 9th of Av, so now you can do laundry. It's easy. Put it in the wash machine or go to your laundromat, take care of it, no problem. Used to be an all-day chore. Going to the river, scrubbing, this, that. We have too much free time. Way too much free time. When you have too much free time, it drives a person nuts. So you got to be busy. What should you be busy with? Torah. That's what you should be busy with. You're not working. Learning, listening to classes. Okay, you got family obligations, other obligations. Fine, you have to have fixed times. If you don't have fixed times, everything goes to. You won't be in control of anything, right? So now, then the question was, okay, but what about King David? What about what King David says? Even if I saw evil temptations, now you have to understand, it's all divinely inspired what he's telling you. Even if I saw it rising in my heart, God ignored it. He didn't hear it because he doesn't consider bad thoughts as actions. True? Right? Only by certain things. But what's he saying over here? What's he saying in the name of God? He doesn't hear because he doesn't consider bad thoughts as actions. God ignored it. Now, I would ask the following question. Did he ignore it by King David or by everybody? Because even if King David thought it, you don't think he fought against it? You don't think he worked hard to get it out of him? So that he knew. That he knew King David's going to fight like a dog. Not calling him a dog, God. He's going to fight hard to uproot this from his soul. So God didn't hear that. He didn't hear that bad thoughts or whatever. Because he knows it's going to uproot it. Is that the same by every single person? Oh, that's a different issue. We're not on King David's level. We're not even close. But we have to strive. We have to strive. Now, he doesn't consider bad thoughts as actions. In general, that's true. We explain that's true. Why? Because thoughts in my mind don't matter. Except maybe for a few things. Maybe idolatry, or immorality. But in general, that statement is 100% true. He ignores what we think in general because what we think doesn't matter. It's irrelevant in the bigger scheme of things. Oh, but what's the problem? The more you think about certain things, the more you want to do it. Even if you didn't do it, that's worse. Not a contradiction. It's how it works. In other words, the problem is the more you think about doing X, Y, or Z, you just say, person says, right, this friend of mine, got to have this pepperoni pizza. He's not going to fight it off. He's just going to go do it. Okay. But it kept building in his mind. Right? It kept building in his mind. He's going to say, but the thoughts don't matter. But the thoughts in this case, of course, matter because it caused him to do something. But in general, 100% thoughts don't matter. That 100% is true. Except for certain cases. Only in certain cases it's true. That my thoughts might matter. But in general, it's true. My thoughts don't matter. And that's how I would answer. That's how I would answer that. Yeah, there are a number of other another few answers I just want to get to. The Malbim, more than 100 years ago, explained the question was, if God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, why is an angel? Why does an angel stop him? Oops. Sorry, why does an angel stop him? Why does an angel stop him over here? So it comes on the Malbim. The Malbim says, God created a specific angel. There was a specific angel telling him to stop. Why? The rabbis tell us every fulfillment of the commands, right? Every fulfillment of commands creates an angel. So an angel is already created from the fulfillment of God's commands, right? What did he do? He brought him up. He was going to sacrifice him. So he did what God said. 100% he did what God said. But he didn't actually slaughter him, right? That he didn't do. That he didn't go that far. But otherwise, he did what God said. But if Abraham would have gone to continue to slaughter him, what would that act have been? Murder. So what did the angel do? The angel comes along, generated from this good deed, right? He's going to sacrifice him. Generated from this good deed, so he doesn't lose his existence, right? Good. So this good deed angel is going to stop him and jumps in and tells Abraham to stop. Right? And that can also explain why Abraham believed the angel. Because the angel was already generated from he created it. Because we create good angels, we create bad angels. Right? Good angels meaning when we do the right thing. Depending how we did the mitzvah, stronger ones, weaker ones, we create bad angels. Right? For God forbid transgressions. That we do. So what's God going to do after 120 years? He's going to bring up all the angels and say, okay, let's hear the testimony. God already knows what he's going to, what he's going to answer. But, just like a law court here, he's going to hear all the testimony. And all the angels created from all his actions going to come and give testimony. That's a third explanation. Fourth explanation is the name of Shlomo Sofer. And he brings down like this. He brings down the following incident. He said, the Vilna Gaon, more than 250 years ago, Rabbi Elijah Vilna, he came out very strong against Hasidus. Well, for a number of reasons. In the student of Zalman, right, was supposed to sign, right? He wanted to sign as well, right? Sign this document against Hasidus and what was going on at the time. So comes along Rav Zalman, he asked the question. He asked the question here. How could Abraham heed the command of a mere angel not to listen, right, when the command to sacrifice is from God himself? So what did he say? What did he answer? So Zalman answered like this. When it comes to slaughtering someone, you need a direct command from God himself. Angel not good enough. You need a direct command. Direct command from God himself. When it comes to saving someone, that's different. I don't need God for that. I can have an angel, right? I can have an angel dictate over here. So Zalman concluded, even though the Vilna Gaon was like an angel, Vilna Gaon would have been great even in Rashi's generation, no question. So he said to slaughter someone, i.e. the Hasidim, you need a direct command from God himself. So he refused to sign. He didn't go like his Rebbe did in that case. And that the Vilna Gaon agreed. He heard his claim and he agreed. Right? Interesting comparison. So those are four potential reasons why God gave the original command and the angel is the one who stopped. Now, a bunch of questions here. And that is, I'm kind of shocked. I thought that was pretty clear. Just kidding. Right? Whatever, the complicated things. Right? Someone here pointed out already. Yeah, deep questions here. Why do some think they can instruct angels? Well, Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, we could have power over angels. How do we have power over angels? We could, if you want to, sorcery is forbidden. Sorcery for a Jew and non-Jew is forbidden. Because you're playing with forces you shouldn't be playing with. So if you use some of the dark side, I don't have to be in a high spiritual level. You use some of the dark side, I can have power over angels. Ouija boards, it's other things, they have power. They have real power if you know what you're doing. Again, doesn't have to be, at such a high spiritual level here. Without, going into all that. But if a person used, certain incantations or whatever, they got power over angels. So the question is, why do some people think they can? Because they can. If they tap into sorcery, which is forbidden, 100% is forbidden. If a person taps into the dark side, they can tap into that. The question is, why should we think we should use them as intermediaries? That's what I think maybe the question is. And the answer is we can't. We don't pray to intermediaries. We don't pray to angels. We don't pray to other powers, quote unquote. Even though they stem from God. That was the problem of Pharaoh and everybody else. That God is so lofty, why does he need, why does he need to be in control of the sun, the moon? Let them worry about things in this world. God will worry about other things. He's too lofty. So what's the answer? Not true. Goes against what the Rambam says, first the 13 principles of faith. Right? So these things don't have independent power. But if we wanted to, technically, could we say certain incantations have power? Can have power over angels? Could. Think about, martial arts in general. I spoke about this also. Did this video on YouTube, on Tanakh Talk. And that is, he takes somebody who, well-versed in martial arts, takes his bare hand and crushes concrete. Now, according to nature, you break your hand. 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, if you don't break your hand, you break a bunch of bones in there. Right? Concrete, wood, I don't care. With your foot, with your hand. According to nature, it's not possible. Now, you'll tell me what's behind the martial arts and whatever, but, let's keep in mind one thing. When a person, in general, if you see what these people do, they get ready, they're making all these different motions, different things. They never normally do it in silence. They always make some sort of utterance, some sort of noise, right? Whatever the noise is, whatever the guttural thing is, that they say. Now you have to remember another thing. Who did Abraham give everything to spiritually? To Isaac. What did he give to the children of Keturah? Who is Keturah? Hagar. He married Hagar after Sarah dies. He has a whole bunch of kids with her. And what does he give them? Gifts. What gifts? Rashi says names of God. Shemus Atum, names of impurity. Sorcery, essentially. So the question is, why? Why in the world did they give them that, the vault? Right? And where did they go? They went to the east. So we understand that. Far east, that's why it's very big, in that area of the world. So Rabbi answered, he gave them that in order that they won't be close to Jews. They won't, they're not going to have any connection to Jews at all. So they went, so far off the deep end, we're not going to mistake them for Jews. Good. That's one thing. Right? But it's still, I would say, it's a little bit problematic. Why put it in the world? Even if they're going to go that far away and not, and we'll be totally different. Jews will be totally different, than these people and in the rest of the world. Okay. But why even give people the opportunity? Because we all have free will. Why did God create evil? See, bad thing for the Christians, which they misinterpret Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. The God created evil, they changed the meaning of the verse like they're good at. They totally mistranslated. Because what are they going to do with Mr. S? Good excuse. Why does evil happen? Because he does it. Then we get to suffering. If God's all good, why is there evil? Good question. Does that make God evil? No. Can people tap into evil if they want? Yes. Does God want them to? No. Not interested. If they do, okay, it's their choice. They're going to pay. They're going to pay a serious price, but they're going to pay. So it's still a little bit hard. Still a little bit hard to understand. So then the question is, okay, so what was the Akedah all about? What was the binding of Isaac all about? So the Ramban there says, why don't you give him credit, as we said before? Give him credit for what he did, what he would have done. Why make him go through it? So the Ramban answers, unreached potential is unreached potential. That means the following. That means that he can't get credit for doing something unless you did it. But what about if I thought about doing it? Okay, that's another level. Then a person can get credit even if you didn't do it. Fine. But we're going according to what potential is. So aren't you going to say, didn't Abraham already have his legacy? Didn't he already have his legacy? He had his legacy. 100% he had his legacy already. Had he not gone through the binding of Isaac, the Akedah, as it's called, he wouldn't have been who he was. His legacy would have been tarnished. I don't know. He's 9 for 9. He had a lot of very hard tests. And he passed all of them. Okay, you're not going to give him credit. Fine. Right? He's got to go through it. I get it. But what about his legacy? He already had a legacy. So what? His legacy would have been 10 times greater, million times greater. That's why he had to go through it. Because he didn't do it. Unreached potential is unreached potential. But I was going to forget it. You didn't do it. Someone came to my Rebbe once, called him up and said, it's supposed to be in the, on 9/11. Supposed to be the World Trade Center. Got delayed, this, that. So he wants to wants to bench Goldmill, wants to say a Thanksgiving prayer. So my Rebbe asked him, he said, were you there? He said, no. But he told all the details why he should have been there and he didn't. He said, were you there? He doesn't beat around the bush. You weren't there. You can't make the blessing. He didn't do it. He didn't go through it. If he didn't go through it, finished. How can you make a blessing on something you didn't do? But I could have. I did that. But you didn't do it. You weren't there. Had you been there, different issue. You weren't there. End of story. Yeah, somebody asked, if a ger is a convert, why does the Torah say a ger can be given traits? It's not talking about a convert. There are two definitions of a ger in the Torah. One can be someone who gives up idolatry, keeps the Noahide laws, which we call a ger tosha. Someone who lives amongst the Jewish people, has to be sustained by the Jewish people. Someone we call a ger tosha. A ger tosha, not a problem. Feed him non-kosher. He's a non-Jew. He's not a Jew over here. You have to see when the Torah says a ger, doesn't mean a Jew, a convert, or is it talking about someone, a non-Jew, who lives amongst the Jewish people? If it's talking about a non-Jew who lives amongst the Jewish people, he can eat treif. He can eat not kosher, not a problem. Someone asks, was the man who died in the wilderness again? No. I mean, question is, in the wilderness, what were they? Is it before the Torah was given or after? If it's before the Torah is given, it's hard to say what the people were before. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, their children could have been considered Jews because they kept the law of the Torah before it was given. Whatever that means. Everyone else question if they really Noahites, right? See, when they were Noahites, depends what time in history, you're talking about. What should a ger call himself? I mean, once they convert, they're a Jew. Now, if someone were to ask them, if they don't necessarily look Jewish, per se, you say, oh, you were born a Jew? You can say, I'm a convert. But it's not the first thing a person's going to say necessarily. If someone asks you if you're a Jew, you can say, yeah, I'm a Jew. If you're not Jewish yet, you say, I'm a JIT. I'm a Jew in training. Right? That's what I would say. I'm a Jew in training. After the fact, you say, I'm a Jew. If someone calls you on it, they say, well, you don't necessarily look Jewish. You can say, I'm a convert. Does that mean you have to say you're a convert straight away? No. Doesn't mean that. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily something to hide. You always be reminded of it anyway, in different ways. Right? But it's not something, a person necessarily has to hide from. Somebody asks, many stories about sages asking for disease or suffering. Yeah, doesn't that go against harming yourself? No. Why does that go against harming yourself? Harming yourself means, I take glass and I slip my eyeballs, right? I'm not going to get gross here, right? That's called inflicting punishment on yourself. That's not harming yourself. I'm sorry, that is harming yourself. Asking for suffering, to atone for sin, that's not harming yourself. Harming yourself, you're doing it direct. This is indirect. You're not causing it. You want to be squeaky clean in the next world. You don't want to suffer in this one. Right? We say every day in the morning, we say, don't bring me to trials and tribulations. But on the same time, we don't grow if we don't have them. Are we looking for extra? No. We're not looking for extra. I would say like this. You want to get a lot of credit? person going through a difficult time, whatever it is, what you should say is that even if it's hard and it seems like impossible, you say, God, thank you for giving me this opportunity. You're giving me a golden opportunity to work on my faith and trust in you. Unbelievable brownie points here. You're going to say, but I'm being tossed around like this and like that, and life is hard. You're right. No, I didn't say it's an easy thing to do. Definitely not an easy thing to do. But if God didn't care, he'd give you everything in one shot. Make it so easy. And then he'd say, scram, I don't have anything to do with you. So yeah, harming yourself is doing something direct. Raising yourself to a higher spiritual level through suffering. That's what Rabbi Akiva did. And not everyone agreed with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, I'm willing to sanctify God's name. We're not looking to do that. But Rabbi Akiva understood when we say the Shema. We say, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, with all your possessions. Let's get back to with all your soul. He said, I was bothered by this verse. When am I going to be able to live my life like that? Sanctify my life for God's name. Is that what God wants? If we have to, we will. Right? If a Jew or non-Jew put a gun to your head and say, bow down to this guy in a stick, right? Or, reference to JC or short little fat guy, Mr. Buddha himself. Probably won't call him fatso, but we'll make fun of, idolatry anyway. Mitzvah to make fun of idolatry. Right? They bow down to fatso over here or die. Okay? Anytime, any place, I have to be willing to die. A Jew has to be willing to die. Doesn't apply to a non-Jew. Sanctification of God's name doesn't apply. But, during the Inquisition and all kinds of other things, Jews died rather than kiss the cross. 100%. They sanctify God's name. Now, if that's what God wants and that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do. If you don't, you transgress a pretty serious Torah prohibition. You pretty much guarantee your kids won't stay Jewish and you won't pass it down. You have people like the Moranos, or you should really call them the Anusim, right? The ones that were, that they didn't, they outwardly they showed they were like Christians, but really they were secret Jews, right? But, the reality is, for a Jew, if they're in that position, and God said, and you're in that position, you have an obligation to sanctify his name. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Idolatry, immorality, murder. Jew and non-Jew said, I want you to murder this person or you're going to get murdered or I'm going to kill you. That's it. You got to be willing to die. You got to do it. Can't murder someone. Can't commit, any immorality. Those are the big three you have to give up your life for. Other things you don't necessarily have to give up your life for. And it could be if you gave up your life for, you didn't have to, that's suicide. Suicide's a whole different thing. Totally different thing. Right? Sometimes it won't be called suicide. Or it could be many times it won't be called suicide because the person didn't want to suffer. Let's say I knew somebody like this that had a kidney transplant, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And then 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the other kidney stopped working. They weren't a candidate for another kidney transplant, but they didn't want to live on dialysis. So what happened? They choose to do nothing. Now what happens if your kidneys fail? You die. And what happened? 2 months later, they died. So I asked my Rebbe this question, is that called suicide? He said, no. Person has to go through heroics here if they don't want to. If they don't want to suffer so much, that they don't have to do that. That's not called suicide. If you did something direct, okay, different issue. And even in that case, probably many cases, someone commits suicide, mental illness, other things going on. So most likely they'll be buried in a Jewish cemetery anyway. And they'll get up at resurrection of the dead. Because most people are going to commit suicide not in their right mind. And all you have to do is show a little bit they're not in the right mind. That's enough. Usually. So that's not considering, in this case, asking for suffering. You're not harming yourself. You want to try and raise yourself to a higher spiritual level. Harming yourself is something direct. Someone asks, when you're having bad thoughts, better to repeat the Shema in your head or Tehillim? Both are good. What's better? I would say the Shema is better. Say the Shema is better than saying Psalms. Someone asks, how should I react? Someone tells me that they are agnostic or an atheist. So different ways. An agnostic just says, I have a doubt if there's a God. An atheist says, I know there's not a God. Now, most people probably thought for, couple seconds, and they say, am I an atheist? Yeah. Am I sure of it? 100%. Do they know anything they've ever studied? You ask them. You ever study philosophy? Socrates, Aristotle, probably going to say no. You ever study modern philosophy? Kant, Kierkegaard, Hegel? No. You ever study, Jewish philosophy? Make a big distinction here. The Rambam, Yehuda Levi wrote the Kuzari? No. You ever read the Bible? I saw the movie. Read a little bit of it. So you're not an atheist, you're an idiot. Right? I mean, depends if they want to get in a discussion. If they never studied anything in their life, how can they be an atheist? Right? And agnostic, no different. They're just saying, well, I'm not sure. I mean, plenty of things you can bring proof for. How the world come to be, where the Big Bang come from, if they use that. We're an expanding universe, let's make it expanding. Proof for belief in God. I did 4 videos on Tanakh Talk. Cosmological proof, sociological, psychological, right? Or whatever. I went through 4 different proofs over there. In belief in God. So you can take a look at the videos also over there. Somebody points out, they call them converso, anusim, or the secret Jews. They call them Marranos. Probably shouldn't call them Marranos because Marrano in Spanish is pig. All right, probably not a good idea. I mean, just degrading. But we call them conversos, or they call them anusim. Anusim is probably better. Probably a better name. Any other questions? Someone's at Ger Toshav? Yeah. There's no such thing as Ger Achim. There's either a Ger who's a convert, right back to this. A Ger is either considered a convert, proselyte, as it's translated, or a Ger Toshav, or someone that lives amongst the Jewish people that is non-Jewish, and he keeps the no-hide laws, and he can eat treif. Why was there an altar to Hashem on Mount Carmel? Sacrifice is going to be taking place at the temple. Well, the temple wasn't built yet, was it? If the temple wasn't built yet, so they could make sacrifices on altars that weren't in Jerusalem. They're allowed to, right? That wouldn't be a problem. Once the temple's built, then you don't have any of these, private altars, going around. Is it true a Noahide can still offer sacrifices? There's no sacrifices today. Non-Jews could give sacrifices. They're allowed to give sacrifices when the temple exists. They could give free will offerings, 100%. Nobody gives sacrifices today. Make no mistake. Nobody gives sacrifice. We don't have a temple today. And even though, we're in control of Jerusalem today, every year before Passover, someone tries to sneak a lamb, by the Temple Mount, in order to, give a sacrifice. It's not going to happen. There's a certain level of impurity we have. We can't go on the Temple Mount anyway for Jews. Non-Jews might be a different issue, but again, you go up there with the provocation to the Arabs, they'll fight to the death. So it's a moot point either way. No one's bringing sacrifices there or anywhere else. Someone asked, so Ger Toshav can sell himself into slavery and marry a mamzer. The children wouldn't be a mamzer. Someone asked, a Ger Toshav, 1 second. Can a Ger Toshav sell himself into slavery? No. I don't think, how does the person get into slavery in the first place? If they stole, they have to be rehabilitated. I don't think you put yourself into slavery. But if they were let's say they were a slave, right? Who's a mamzer? Mamzer is a forbidden relationship. Doesn't necessarily mean, we call it an adulterous relationship, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're married. Both people married to different people. It's just someone you're forbidden to be with. They have a child. So we call that child a mamzer. Who can they marry? Someone of the same union, not a slave. Right? Right? Let's say better. Someone of the someone of the same union or convert. Why? Because since this Jew has a blemish on its soul, it's not his problem, not his fault. He was born into this union, wasn't his choice. So a convert, okay, we know where they came from. So they have a past. We're not living in Victorian England over here. They have a past. So they have a problem with genealogy. So they can marry a mamzer or someone from the same union, or you could take the mamzer and marry a slave. That's true. That 100% is true, right? That they could marry a slave, and their children will not be mamzer. That'll free the children, won't free the person. It'll free the person. So if a ger toshav ended up, if he stole something, he ended up a slave, yeah. So then he can marry a mamzer. Right, 100% he can marry a mamzer. Right, that wouldn't be a problem. Right, if there be still slaves today according to international law, that would be a way to fix up the offspring, but not the person. Person can't be fixed up. There's no way to fix it up. He can marry somebody who's allowed to marry, a convert or someone from the same union, right? Or he marries a slave, and that child is no longer a mamzer. That takes care of the problem of the mamzer for the child, but not for the person himself. He just gets the child, future children, out of that problem. Yeah. Someone wants to know, does what non-Jews eat affect them in any shape or form? No. Mentions before, book of Leviticus chapter 11. Talks about kosher and non-kosher animals. And it says that a non-Jew, one of the commentaries says that we see non-Jews eat anything, and whatever they eat doesn't affect them. Right? It doesn't affect them in any way. I mean, certainly physically. So we have no reason to think it's going to affect them spiritually. So they're allowed to. Right? By a Jew, it causes a dullness of heart. It's going to be much harder for them to repent if they eat non-kosher. It's one of the first things you tell them. A Jew's coming back to Judaism to keep kosher and to keep Shabbos. Keep kosher, get the garbage out of your system so you can listen to Torah. And Shabbos, in order that, God runs the world, God's in charge, you don't have the status of a non-Jew. So, in many ways, without going into all those details. So that's not a problem. It doesn't affect the non-Jew spiritually, so they could eat it. The non-Jew eats lots of pig. Well, what's the problem? They can eat pig, they can eat shrimp, they can eat anything they want. Is it going to affect them the same way as a Jew? No. Right? So the commentary says that you get these Noahites that say, yeah, I want to keep kosher, I want to eat these clean animals and all this and all that. Right? But this commentary says a non-Jew's not going to keep something that doesn't affect them. This doesn't affect them. All the pig they want. They can eat whatever they want. Pork chops, bacon, not a problem. Want to eat lobster, not a problem. Clams, oysters, all these things, not a problem. Doesn't affect them. Doesn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. Even right before they go to the mikveh, even right before conversion, not a problem. They're not Jewish. Doesn't affect them. You don't have to feel guilty about it either. It's not a problem. At a certain point, if a person's a JIT, a Jew in training, shouldn't they stop eating this stuff? Yeah, at a certain point. But right before conversion, they can, they can still go to McDonald's. Not an issue. Someone here points out they heard from somebody that non-Jews were commanded to eat according to the kosher laws, that deviated didn't want it. Well, they didn't want the Torah. That's part of the Torah, right? Of keeping kosher. Could be. Yeah. Any other questions? I want to ask. It's true the Second Temple wasn't accepted because it was built by Cyrus the Great. Wasn't Cyrus Jewish? They say Cyrus was the son of Achashverosh and Esther, and he helped rebuild the temple. So even though his father wasn't Jewish, mother was Jewish, so the question is, we weren't on the same level by the Second Temple. Certain things were missing by the Second Temple. They were in Bitumim, and the Kohen could ask, if someone came to them and asked a question, they would take out the breastplate and have these stones, and they would give an answer. Their stones would light up, or whatever. We didn't have that. God's presence wasn't out there like it was in the first temple, etc. So we're on a much lower level at that point, even though we had the temple. Does that mean a convert remains in their paternal tribe? Everybody remains in their paternal tribe. We don't know what that tribe is. Nobody knows. Right? Nobody knows. Right? We don't know what tribe we come from. We'll find out. When the Messiah comes, and Elijah the prophet comes and tells us. Unless a Jew, was born a Kohen or a Levite. Non-Jew not going to have that option. So whatever tribe they come from, but it goes from the father. It'll go from whoever the father is. Convert, say father's not Jewish, let's say. So then they'll be assigned a tribe. What tribe's going to be? No idea. Nobody knows. We don't even know what tribe the Jews are going to be in. Unless they know they come from the tribe of Levi, whether they're a Kohen or a Levi. Any other questions? I said Mr. S would be destroyed at the end. Is a punishment? It's the reality. It's not a punishment. Mr. S not getting punished here. I mean, he's an angel, right? He's an angel that caused everyone to sin, and he takes people's lives. So he's a messenger, not punishment. It means that we're holding a different place in the world. So by holding at a different place in the world, etc., God doesn't need him anymore. Just like even if you say, what's the deal with dinosaurs and whatever, could be, God was busy destroying worlds before this world. So they could have been destroyed in that world, previous world, whatever it was, before this world. Now, so why did God get rid of them? Let's say that's true. So why did God get rid of them? He didn't need them anymore. Right? And certain species, let's say, disappeared. Or certain types of plants, let's say, disappeared because he didn't need them anymore. They need them in the world. So you're going to say, okay, he's a spiritual entity, Mr. S. True. 100% he's a spiritual entity. Causes a lot of damage. Right? It's not a punishment. It's a reality. And that is going to be a different world. And that world is going to be without him. Without causing people to sin, no death. So God doesn't need him. It's not a punishment. I wouldn't say it's a punishment. Any other questions? Where are the giant's bones? I don't know. Could be buried well underneath the, got destroyed by the flood. Or all the people that got destroyed by the flood. We don't know anywhere they are. No idea. They evaporated into thin air, just like, God forbid, a nuclear holocaust. What's going to be? We'll evaporate. We'll totally evaporate. We'll be the lucky ones. The ones who survive, God forbid. God forbid. So they could have just got totally destroyed. You have to remember these, the water was extremely hot, boiling hot, right? That was a miracle. It didn't kill the fish. Right? The water was like unbelievably hot, right? Multiply it by infinity hot, right? Unbelievably hot. So what happened to bones? Could have been just vanished, totally destroyed. Just because we don't have bones doesn't mean they didn't exist. It's interesting. You look at, some museums, they have these, it's prehistoric, quote unquote, animals and dinosaurs and whatever. They make a whole, it's a whole religion in of itself. Take one bone and replicate what it is. And say, oh, it's this big and this, I don't know. It's a whole bunch of conjecture. In general. But even let's say it's true. Let's say it's true. So what? Just because we don't have bones doesn't mean that they didn't exist. I mean, some of them, they say we do have the bones. But the giant's bones, they could have been destroyed. Totally been destroyed. They could have melted. That's better. Better word. Could have melted. Just melted away. If a person, or what would happen? I mean, I'm not a science major here by any stretch. Take water, boiling hot, boiling hot, or something, of that magnitude. And you put flesh in it, what's going to happen? and burn it straight through. I mean, if it's so unbelievably hot, it'll melt it away. That's what's going to happen. Right? So you're going to say, what about bone? It also disintegrates at some point. Not going to last forever. But then again, you got human bones that do. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. Yeah, there are plenty of bones that thousands of years old. It's true. Right? You know, and how we're going to get resurrected because we're also bones, have a certain bone. Right? We're going to get resurrected from. Okay, it's also true. You know, animals the same? Could be. Could be. Yeah. Any other questions? Someone here mentions giant bones have been discovered on archaeological digs. Okay, I'll do more research on that. Yeah, and see. Any other questions? What are those other types of humans? Yeah, so we don't believe what they claim to be Neanderthal and everything was a progression. Yeah, that's called evolution. We don't believe that. 100% we don't believe that. What do we hold? What do we hold? We hold that man was created in its full form. So these things could have been animals, not humans. It can't be a human without a soul. Human without a soul is not human. So or someone here points out maybe he lived many centuries. I don't know. Because the Torah tells me he only lived 120 years. Right? Can't contradict archaeology here. Right? Or archaeology can't contradict it. Right? So, certainly we don't believe there's a progression, no question about that. So it could have been animals. Who says they were humans? They claim to be humans, could be. Right? But, there are different levels. That doesn't, again, it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that it's a clear-cut proof for evolution. Over here, if he was a human, he's a human, just on a lower level. Has the spirit in front of him, inside of him. I don't think there's any question. Right? In other words, if God breathed in the spirit of life, everyone had it, so they also had it. So they also had it. I was going to say that, what they had a 25 IQ? It's kind of hard to say. We're all created equal here. I mean, that's actually not true. I mean, that, a Jew has a different soul than non-Jews. That's true. That's definitely true. Even someone's going to say, okay, bigger, smarter, larger brain cavities. Okay. Yeah, history doesn't portray it necessarily that way. Because if they're going to claim, that, we have, we sort of evolved and whatever, they did have intelligence, no question. No question. What about spiritual intelligence? Spiritual intelligence is a totally different thing. And that a person could tap into whatever level. I mean, you had people well before. People like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You have people we can't even imagine who they were. They say, the 12 tribes that are in exile. And they're living on a whole different level than we are. Wherever they may be. Whole different level. Right? So that, that being the case, you have people from way back that predate all this, that they are on a pretty high sophisticated level. So, the ones that are going to say, oh, they adopted, they started off, much less intelligent, became more intelligent. I don't know. You don't see that. You don't see that by the patriarchs, by the matriarchs, by the Jewish people in general. They're great, great people. Right? It totally negates that. Yeah, any other questions? Did the trees survive in Noah's flood due to a miracle by God? Yeah. Absolutely. Just because there was a flood doesn't mean, everything, either you tell them when they got destroyed and you just put everything back, it just got destroyed by the flood and put everything back, that could be, or they weren't affected, kind of like the fish. that they weren't affected. Is the life on other planets? It doesn't matter. Could be. Not necessarily a contradiction. It could be. It could be. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. I just have a bunch of other questions to go through, but I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Israel Time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Rabbi Chaim Coffman or be on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimcoffman @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a good beginning.